The Committee on Economic Growth, Energy Policy, and Regulatory Affairs will come to order. I want to welcome everyone for coming. Without objection, the chair may declare recess at any time, and I recognize myself for the purpose of making an opening statement. It's an honor to chair the Subcommittee on Economic Growth, Energy Policy, and Regulatory Affairs. I'd like to thank the witnesses for their testimony today, and I look forward to working with Ranking Member Bush to provide necessary oversight on these critical sectors. Today's hearing will be on the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, or the SPR for short. The decisions that led to the largest drawdown of our vital oil in history requires oversight. At its height, the SPR was at 695 million barrels under the previous administration. It now sits at 371 million barrels, which is a 47% reduction. It's nearly half. On the first day in office, Joe Biden canceled the Keystone XL pipeline, killing thousands of high-paying American jobs and openly attacking the oil and gas industry. Less than a week later, Mr. Biden placed a moratorium on federal on- and offshore oil and natural gas leases. These actions increased the average price of gasoline to record highs by the summer of 2022, forcing Americans already struggling with out-of-control inflation to foot the bill for poor policy. In an attempt to hide the failed results of an all-of-government war on our domestic energy industry, the administration recklessly turned to the SPR. Joe Biden authorized the biggest drawdown in history, releasing more oil from the SPR than all other previous administrations combined. All other previous administrations combined. In the last 2 years, more oil has been siphoned off our reserves than in the previous 46 years. For a quick bit of history, the SPR was founded in 1975 for national security reasons to protect our country in times of war, national emergencies, or severe acts of God. Now, 7 months after President Biden authorized the first release of crude, gas prices reached an all-time high of just over $5 a gallon in June of 2022. Then the administration tried to claim it was Putin's fault. Well, newsflash, it wasn't. Despite the administration's flimsy claim of the quote-unquote Putin price hike, that didn't necessitate the drawdowns. The truth is, Mr. Biden set up failure long before Russia crossed the border into Ukraine. Shockingly, instead of cutting red tape and allowing domestic producers to even the scales of supply and demand, which would have driven down prices for consumers, not only here at home, but also alleviated pressures on our European allies, Joe Biden instead attacked American companies. He asked mini Putins like Venezuela to increase production instead of unleashing the American energy sector. President Biden accused them of price gouging and demanded they ramp up production while refusing to acknowledge his administration's role in the energy crisis. His cancellation of the Keystone XL pipeline, the moratorium on federal on- and offshore oil and natural gas, and even attacks on the American energy sector have driven this crisis. Rather than lowering energy prices and encouraging domestic energy industry and supporting good-paying American jobs, the Biden administration used the SPR as a stopgap to lower energy prices before the November midterm elections. Further, the administration sold millions of barrels of our crude to companies controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. So why is the Biden administration depleting our own emergency stockpiles to benefit foreign adversaries? In fact, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin just issued a memorandum to his forces last week, which said, and I quote, "An increasingly aggressive China is trying to shape international rules-based system to suit its authoritarian preferences." And I agree. So why is President Biden draining our SPR to fill China's? China has nearly 1 billion barrels in their reserve, and we have just about a third of that. So that's unacceptable. So this hearing is going to examine why the Biden administration is draining our SPR, the national security concerns with the depleted reserve, the long-term implications of renewables, exclusive, renewables exclusive political approach, and the practical policy solutions to ensure energy affordability and security for years to come. We know that the Strategic Petroleum Reserve was formed to protect our country in, remember, times of war, national emergency, and effects of acts of God. Did any of these happen in the last 2 years? No. Are we at war? No. Did we have a severe act of God? No. And did we suffer through a national emergency that would have necessitated tapping the SPR? No. So why, under this administration, were 267 million barrels of oil depleted from our emergency reserve? So the fundamental question that this hearing must help us answer is this: did Joe Biden risk our national security and deplete our reserves by over 40% in a vain attempt to curry short-term political gain before midterm elections. So I want to thank you again very much.